cluster level configurations. Okay, some of them are even in the cluster, some of them are namespace. We'll go one by one. So the first thing is called the namespace. So we have already seen these namespaces in the command line option. Given the command cubes, it will get namespace. It is going to list all the namespaces. So the system level namespaces are 4. For Kubernetes dashboard, we have created a new namespace called Kubernetes dashboard. Okay. And then next is your nodes. Nodes is the area which is going to talk about what are all the nodes added to the cluster. If you select that particular node, you can get a detailed information about the particular node. What is the CPU allocation? What is the memory? All those information you can see here. And next is called your roles. Okay. So when I talked about Kubernetes, Kubernetes is the role-based access control. Even in the dashboard, what we have done, we have created the user, and that user we have allocated an existing role. Okay. So when I talk about roles, there are two kinds of role available. One is called the cluster role. That means the role will be available in the cluster level. Next one is the normal role, which will be in the namespace level. Let me talk about the cluster role first. So yesterday we have used, there are almost 67 roles by default available when you install the cluster. There we have used a role called cluster admin. Let me see, where is the role? Yeah. So cluster admin is the role. This is the role which we have used. So basically, when you create a role, what you will provide is resources. That means we can talk about pods, services. All these are called as resources. And next one is called the verbs. Verbs is something like what kind of action I can do it. Like there are actions like get. Get means it will get the information. Read means it will read information from the particular resource. Or write means I will be able to write that particular thing. So those kind of things you will see that. So this cluster admin role have star represent all the resources and star represent all the action. So this cluster admin role has complete access to the cluster. So that's what this role is defined. Okay. But in the same way, let me show you one more role. This is the Kubernetes dashboard role, where you can see it can read the pods and nodes. It can get, list, and watch. So it can list the pods, it can watch the pod, and it can get the details of the pod. This is the role Kubernetes dashboard is using. It is not using the complete cluster role. Okay, so this is how you are going to define a role, and that role will be binded to a service account using cluster role binding. If you remember the yesterday's role, that's what we have created. Let me show you that. If you see this, we are creating a cluster role binding. There, the service account is mapped to the cluster admin role. Yeah, cluster admin role. So that is what this role binding is all about. So you can see our admin user. This is the role binding I have created, where the admin user is mapped to the cluster admin role. Okay, this is on the cluster roles and cluster role bindings. And the same way, in the namespace level, you can create a role, and in the namespace level, you will be having the binding. So this is the difference between cluster role and the normal role.